stream. Welcome. If you couldn't hear that before, I tried to start this without putting myself in the stream. Rogelio will be here in just a second. He was just finishing up bowling. His partner had a 300 game. That was kind of fun. But yeah, we're here for week 12 of the minor league season. Another very eventful week. A lot of stuff going on in and around Tigers baseball all this week. I was down at Comerica Park today for the Tigers game, which was interesting. It was, for the time being, the end of Nick Maton at third base in Detroit. Rogelio went down to Toledo because we thought that Scooble was going to be starting. Scooble did not, in fact, start, but Rogelio did get to see Bo Brisky and Trey Winginter and some other guys pitch, so we'll talk about that a little bit. But first of all, thank you for joining us. I know it's a little bit later tonight. Blood Right, thanks as always for the $5. Stan, I heard that Rogelio ran into you this today at Toledo, and he said that was very enjoyable. I got to talk to Josh, aka Tigers Torquemoil, or one of the two members of that, down at Comerica. That was nice to see. It's always fun to see you guys when we're out in the public. Putting faces to names and trying not to be jerks on our part. We don't ever want to blow anybody off, but it's always fun to interact with people in the real world. So yeah. Scope did. Deadly Ninja Beast says Scope outlived Maton. He did for now. Maton will remain in the organization probably through next year at least. Jonathan Scope will not. It was just time. Like I said, I was down there at Comerica today, and I'm sure anybody who was watching it could see it too, but you could just feel it, So Nick Maton made, if people didn't see it, Nick Maton basically single-handedly cost the Tigers that game. You can never say that. Other guys could have gotten hits in key situations, but the Tigers would have won that game most likely if not for Nick Maton making a couple pretty bad defensive plays. One just a completely egregious error, and the other one really any competent third baseman should make. But yeah, he had a bad throw, and I want to say the sixth inning that pulled Torkelson off the bag. Torkelson made a nice acrobatic swipe tag, and you could just tell, like, he's at a place right now where he didn't want the ball hit to him. And to be frank, he's grading out as the worst regular third baseman in baseball, and he was among maybe the 2 or 3 worst offensive regulars in baseball. There's no room for a guy like that in the major leagues. Not to be mean about it, right? But like, if you're performing like that, you're not performing like a big leaguer. And I think Nick Maton is more talented than what he's done, but he was clearly in his own head, and so they've sent him down to Toledo. Now, this is where the fun part comes in, because everybody was like, "All right, it's fine. It's finally time. Let's see some of these prospects." And apparently, what we're going to get is we're going to get Tyler Nevin for the third time, which is not great. And it's not, again, nothing against Tyler Nevin, but we've seen that. We've seen him come up and struggle twice for extended periods of time. Meanwhile, you've got one of the hotter hitters in the minor leagues right there on your 40-man roster in the outfield in Toledo, and they choose not to call him up. So we kind of discussed this heavily in our Discord chat. And I basically came down to three conclusions here, and we'll see when Rogelio gets here. We'll see what he thinks. But I've come up with 3 reasons why the Tigers aren't bringing Meadows up, or why aren't moving Colt Keith from AA to AAA. And one of them basically means, the reason number 1 is that, not to put too fine a word on it, but Scott Harris wants to tank this year. He's not interested in competing, not really interested. Feels like bringing these guys up would just kind of waste their service time. Or he has a set plan. So, August 1st is the day when they start bringing prospects. But until then, they try, or maybe the trade deadline, basically. Idea number 2 is he doesn't think that these prospects, these Parker Meadows, Andre Lipsius, Colt Keith, he doesn't actually think they're very good. Now, that would be a bummer for us, as we spend a whole lot of time talking about these guys, and I think that they're pretty good. But I'm, Scott Harris is his own man, and he's going to make those own judgments. And the third option is that Scott Harris is dumb, or in some way incapable of seeing what everybody else sees. I mean, I find that third option would be hard to believe. I feel like it's probably number 1. He's probably got a set date for when he wants to start bringing guys up. Worried that it could be number 2, though. Honestly, if he doesn't think any of these guys are worthy of coming up in place of Tyler Nevin. One thing we've also talked about on the show, and we discussed in the Discord, was, in the last collective bargaining agreement, they came up with this solution to prevent teams from manipulating service time for their young studs, their young top prospects. And what that would mean, basically, you could bring a guy up at the beginning of the year, and if he goes on to win an award, Rookie of the Year, an MVP, or placed in the top 3 of either of those before he hits arbitration, your team gets a draft pick that's essentially at the end of the first round. We saw that with Seattle last year. They brought up Julio Rodriguez. He won Rookie of the Year. They got a draft pick right after the first round this year. So that really helps them. The problem with that is this is the weirdest thing about it is in order to get that for a player, that player has to be on a top 100 list at two of the following sites, either ESPN, so Keith, or it would now be Kylie McDaniel. Kylie McDaniel's top 100 list, Baseball America's top 100 list, or MLB Pipeline's top 100 list. So if you're not on the preseason top 100 and you come up and win Rookie of the Year, the team doesn't get a compensation pick. So the example we gave was if Reese Olson came up or didn't give up another run for the rest of the year for the Tigers, put together the greatest rookie pitching season of all time, they wouldn't get a draft pick for him because he wasn't on any top 100 list at the end of the year. Feels kind of lame, but that's the way it is. That's the way they decided to do it. But Colt Keith is a top 30 of Baseball America right now. He's in the top 100 at MLB Pipeline. He's a guy who would qualify for that draft pick compensation next year. And the only caveat there is that they can't have been on an active roster for 60 days. So they could bring Colt Keith up to the majors mid-August, early September, have him play, and then start the season next year in Detroit. And if he wins Rookie of the Year or finishes top 3, they get an extra pick. So there's going to be some, thinking down the road going on. Who knows? Scott Harris hasn't really talked about his philosophies on anything other than he likes guys who walk and he dominates the strike zone. But we're just kind of left here to speculate. So, and Christopher says here that I thought the draft lottery was supposed to combat tanking. Well, yes and no. It's never really combated tanking in the NBA. Teams still try to get high draft picks. We saw with the Pistons, they played some of the worst basketball you've ever seen. And what we'll see soon with Rogelio here, what we'll see soon in baseball is that teams can't finish in the top or pick in the top 10 for multiple years in a row. If you're a revenue sharing team, 3 years in a row, and if you're not, if you don't receive revenue sharing, if you're a rich team, you can only do it 2 years in a row. So we're going to see some things change soon in that regard. But for right now, and that may be in Scott Harris's calculus right now, right? Like they had a top 3 pick this year. They can get another top 10 pick next year, but after that, they can't. So maybe this is the year to tank again and get one last draft haul before they, try to actually win. But anyway, Rogelio, welcome. I've been here rambling on my own for a few minutes, but I figured we should go started.
Well, it's funny was I was about to get on, and then I check my team on out of the park baseball simulator, and I won the championship. I got to the postseason, and I was so stunned because I came in as a wild card, and I won through everything, and I didn't really
think tournament.
Yeah,
got to get to that tournament, baby.
You know what? I'm telling you, the back of my bullpen was JJ Putz from so it's Putz from 2011,
from Trenton, right?
Yeah, from Trenton, 2011 JJ Putz card. Keith Folk from Mission Select, so that's he was 31, so he was in his prime. But my starting staff was terrible. It was not among, but I don't want to get into that. But anyways, I was so stunned that I was like, I took a minute to absorb. I was like, oh, shit. Shit. Get a podcast. So,
got a minor celebration going on. There's a winner's win. We'll take anything we can get.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But a lot to get to. So first and foremost, I wanted to say thank you to Stan, who took the time to got the chance to meet Stan today down in Toledo. And you met somebody too, right, Chris?
Yeah, I brought up earlier. I met Josh from Tigers Torquemoil, I believe is the name of the Twitter account. But it's nice enough to come down to my section and say hello, and we chatted for a little bit. It was nice to. I was saying it's always nice to meet you guys in real life. If you want to talk to us, you're more than welcome to. If not, keep doing what you're doing.
No, it was cool. It was nice because it was right before the storm. I left as we were joking around earlier, riding the storm out, and that was definitely a experience because if you go to the screen, if you're heading up from Toledo to the west, you could see it coming. So it was really, it was kind of trippy.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, there was a game we went to the Mud Hens earlier this year, I think, where maybe it was last summer, where I was coming home from your house basically and just saw this enormous, supercell storm coming my way. And like I pride myself on never stopping during the rain. Like I'm not one of those people, like I'll slow down, but I'm not going to be one of those people that stops in their overpass. But boy, was I considering it. I couldn't see. My tires had no tread on them. It was rough, but I'm still here.
And what's here is our slides. So thank you, Chris, for getting those done. I was trying to do them at the bowling alley, but the Wi-Fi was terrible. So,
yeah, I did my best.
No, you did a really good job. And today it was interesting down in Toledo. It was a series of bullpen arms. A lot of guys making it was one signing the Tigers signed in Clavo, who I totally missed that they signed him. And he didn't look too well. I mean, I don't know. He was like 91 tops, maybe. Slider looked a little flat. But Brisky, who's pitching out of the pen or pitching the first inning, looks like he's going to be pitching exclusively out of the bullpen going forward because he came out pitching from the
stretch
and hit 97, 98 stretch. And he exclusively threw fastballs and sliders. I don't know if I saw a changeup or not. I know he has a really good changeup. And then it was just a myriad of relievers between the two of them. And Dallas Keuchel actually looked pretty good too. And he had some good swing and miss stuff. But then you kind of wonder if it was the bats or not. But the bats ended up waking up a little bit right as I was leaving, of course, as Parker Meadows extended his hitting streak.
Yeah, and that was, part of that was I think Lipsius had a big single, and then Parker Meadows they did a challenge on a pitch that looked like it was way inside, and it caught maybe like 1 millimeter of the strike zone. The pitcher challenged it, and so Meadows went. It was a 2-2 count, and the next pitch he just laced the double to the gap, and that's when the floodgates opened. And it was nice to see him extend that hitting streak because that was basically his last chance. He didn't know it at the time, but it ended up being his last chance. And yeah, as you see there, 15-game hitting streak, 9 multi-hit games during this stretch. He's hitting 333 in June, I believe. Really, really picking it up. You were doing research on it, and he did the same sort of thing last year. It's good to see. Right before you got on, I was discussing a little bit about why the Tigers might not be bringing him up.
Allow that.
Why they're bringing up Nevin, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, here's the call, by the way. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, first and foremost, thank you. Yeah, this is the call that Chris was referring to, and here it is.
This is about the closest I've ever seen. Like what? Yeah, like, and you see Parker Meadows' face, like, all right.
He challenged one earlier too in the game. That I think he appealed and won too. But thank you, Blood Right.
Is that a double?
Exquisite.
Blood Right?
Yeah.
Exquisite.
I think it's a twofer right there. But it was. And he brings up a good point about the Torkelson debacle here in a second. But Stan and I were talking, and Stan said something that kind of made a lot of sense to me, which was a good theory that I thought that I wanted to share. And Stan said that when I told him that Nick Maton got sent down, he thought that would be a good idea to put McKinstry in the infield and call up Meadows in the outfield. And I actually really like that idea because it gives him some versatility in terms of outfield wise, a good have another left-handed bat out there, but instead looks like it's Nevin, although it's not unofficially, but it was as they was on the big screen, they called Nevin, and then 2 seconds later they changed their mind after that. So it looks like he's going to be the guy.
No, we were discussing that. I'm apologies. I'm talking to somebody else in the media in the press box at Comerica, and we were both agreeing, like, yep. They should probably, send Maton down. Maybe they should bring up Parker Meadows, and it's because they have plenty of infielders. They really do. You got Zach Short on the team. You got Banya's on the team. You've got Scope on the team still. You got McKinstry, like you said, he's a natural second baseman. There's plenty of guys to cover the infield. You're getting rid of a left-handed bat in Maton. Why not bring up Meadows? Let him play in the outfield. He's your left-handed stick. You can bat him ninth or whatever, like give him time. But We're not in charge. I assume that it's mostly a Scott Harris decision, but I would think that AJ Hinch has some say in this. It may just be that, like, okay, well, Meadows is off limits according to Harris, so then the decision is between basically Nevin and Lipsius and Nick Solak, and they went with Nevin, I guess. So, but yeah, Stan's point is solid, and yeah, it would have made plenty of sense to me if they brought up Parker Meadows, but they didn't, or at least it appears they haven't.
At first, at bat that Nick Solak had today against Keuchel, 3 pitches. I mean, he just looked silly. He was just mowed him down pretty quickly. And the other thing too, interesting enough about the inside, even with Rizzo. I mean, why did they sign Rizzo? Obviously, and they signed Johan Camargo. I mean, there's some of it just like, are they really just waiting until they are your tank theory, Chris, that you've talked about is coming to fruition? It really is.
It's my underwater submersible tank theory. That's just a timely reference. That's I mean, that's a good point. Like, so not only do they have all these infielders already at the big leagues, they keep adding more to the roster down in Toledo. They added Joe Rizzo, Solak we talked about, Margot you talked about. They have Lipsius there. They got rid of Brendan Davis this week when they got Camargo, but it's like, yeah, they just, I don't know. They're looking for, maybe Scott Harris is trying to break a record for collecting infielders. I don't really get it. Like this, but who's to say?
Yeah, especially if you're not going to call them up or do. I mean, if you're the idea that maybe you call them up in July, is that what the case is then? So so maybe it's like this then. Wild and crazy theory here. Tigers make a couple trades, right? In the trade deadline, they trade a couple of regulars. They bring up guys like Rizzo and Camargo because they have. Well, no, Rizzo doesn't. Has Rizzo been in the major leagues? I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
He hasn't. No.
Okay, so Camargo has been in the major leagues. You bring up some of those veteran guys, even a guy like Andrew Knapp too, who can play first, who can catch, and you don't bring up the prospects. It sounds like a stupid theory, but in all reality, why? What else would you go outside of just filling the? To me, I didn't feel the need that they needed to have all these extra infielders. I mean, what's happened to Andrew Navigato? Or the guy, you know what I mean? Like, what?
He's hanging out in Erie, waiting for, just Erie forever. John Valenti was a guy who always hits. He barely plays because they've got all these other bodies there. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe they're looking for a replacement for McKinstry. Maybe we're going to trade McKinstry at the deadline or something. I really couldn't tell you. Again, Scott Harris hasn't really explained that aspect of what he's doing. We're left here to, and most GMs don't explain what their plan is in the minors, so we're just kind of left here to speculate. And it's a strange roster setup there in Toledo, and also now in Detroit. But maybe, like I said, maybe there's just a hard deadline. Once like August 1st rolls around, they'll start bringing up the prospects. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Camargo left. You think about Camargo left Kansas City because he had the option. He had the built-in option that if he didn't get major league time at some point, he would go elsewhere. So I think he wouldn't come here unless he really believed he had a shot at playing in the big leagues. I mean, that's why he left. I mean, he was in AAA Omaha, hit that clause that happens after a certain period of time. So maybe the Tigers promised him something. I know it's irresponsible speculation, but why else would you come here then?
Maybe he looked at the numbers for the Tigers third baseman this year and thought I could do that. I don't know. But yeah, it's not like the Royals were tearing things up. So I don't know. It's been a strange year of adding, and maybe Scott Harris just likes to add kind of these 4A guys and hopes one of them catches fire. I don't know, but we're just left to speculate. But it ended up being a decent week for the Mud Hens. One of the interesting things was that it was fortunate for them. They had a rough injury. It was a Jose De Leon on Saturday night. hurt his arm while he was warming up, just nasty. But St. Paul, Minnesota's AAA affiliate, was there in Toledo playing the Tigers, so they were able to bring up a bullpen arm today with minimal effort, which is logistically good for them. But yeah, I don't know. There weren't other than Meadows, there weren't any huge standout performances down there. We saw Manning had that kind of funky, wild outing where he got out of some jams. Skubal had a great first inning and then looked like he was dealing with a blister or something. After in the second inning, his command really fell apart on him. Stuff still looked great. He just couldn't land it consistently. So we're looking at least one more start in the minors for him, I would assume.
Yeah, Matt Manning looks like he might be the scheduled starter because I think Monday and Wednesday was to be announced for the series in Texas, correct?
Yeah, and they said Manning might do one of them. They were going to try to push Reese Olson back a start, maybe. So, yeah, Manning would make sense. He's at least at the point where he can throw enough pitches to clear 5 innings theoretically, whereas I don't think Skubal is there quite yet. So, but then becomes the 40-man roster maneuvering because you got Erod throwing a bullpen the other day. You got Brisky is on the 60-day, I believe, along with Erod and Manning and Skubal. All those guys have to come off the 60-day IL, and that means people on the current 40-man roster have to go. So maybe that'll be it for Blair Calvo, who you saw today. I don't know. We'll see what happens. There can be a fair amount of roster movement here in the next couple of weeks.
We have Deadly Ninja Bees. Does Hinch know that Harris is punting the season? I would think so, based off the Colt Keith comments. I mean, if you look at it that way. Speaking of Colt Keith, because we should be in some celebration mode here for Erie.
Proud of you guys. Hey, to think of where we were after a month into the season to where we are now, you guys did a tremendous job. Love all you guys. Let's have fun tonight. Let's go.
Yeah. There we champagne pop.
Yeah.
And I wish that would have, I think, you know what, Chris? I think if we would have gone, we would have been in that locker room. You know that?
Well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Look at you got RJ Pettit in the background. Yeah, that's video of Erie winning. They clinched the playoff berth. If you were watching us on Thursday, you saw them have that celebration delayed by one day with an epic 9th inning collapse, but they pulled it off the next night, and they did it by winning a game. So that was good to see.
Yeah, that was it was interesting too. That game, or when I was texting Greg about it, he was like, "Oh, I'm used to." He had a reaction video too. There was a reaction video with him and Sam, who is the broadcast assistant this year. Sam's a great guy, and Sam, you just see him go pale as a ghost as he sees that home run go out, and Greg's just like his stone face, like, "Yeah, it'll happen."
Yeah, he called it. They still had 3 games left to play, so right. I think he knew it wasn't like the end of the world, and he called it. He did a professional job, but it was like, if you didn't watch it, it was just a comedy of errors in that game. It was 3 routine ground balls that didn't get converted into outs, and just one thing after another, and the 3-run walk-off homer by a guy who was 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. It just felt like one of those times where the other team had a little bit of magic, but they came back the next night and pitched really well and hit really well. Big 3-run homer from Justice Bigby to give them, because I think they were being no hit through 5 innings or something like that. But kind of a resilient effort from a team that's been resilient all year. We were invited onto the Zoom call with Gabe Alvarez and some of the players after the game, and you heard Gabe Alvarez in that celebration talk about guys coming back from where they were a month into the season and really turning it around. And a lot of that had to do, he thought, with Dylan Dingler and Andrew Navigato coming back. That kind of leadership and those veterans who came and performed. And you could see this past week they both did pretty well.
Yeah, and when I asked them about the impact that Myers and Bigby have had, and they've continued to not slow down. I mean, it was before you know it, a team could figure them out sooner or later. But honestly, Myers just looked really good in terms of even hitting opposite field power too. It's not like cheapy hits. Like there was, I remember that double he had in Harrisburg where it was an opposite field double. It was a smoke that was smoked, and Bigby came up clutch the night they clinched because Erie was down. He came up, hit a 3-run homer, and put Erie ahead, and they never looked back. And those two have been really, in a way, too. Ben Malgeri, who we're actually, by the way, for everybody tomorrow, we're going to be recording an interview with Ben Malgeri, and we'll be posting it on our YouTube page, and then we're going to also post it on the podcast. So be on the lookout for that as our Tiger minor league prospect interview series continues. That is now our 5th player this year.
That sounds. Is it?
So we've had.
Yeah, we talked to Keith and Malloy in the off season.
Yep. Then we talked to
Witherspoon.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
I feel like we're missing somebody.
That would be a bummer.
I feel like there's there's a pitcher, maybe another pitcher involved. I don't know. So, but yeah, we'll be on the lookout for that. But anyway, the play of Malgeri, or excuse me, of Bigby's kind of really impacted how much Malgeri's been playing since he got injured.
Yeah, and they brought up Myers and Bigby, and that's also affected the playing time of Jake Holton, who was like both Holton and Malgeri were playing well. Malgeri was hurt, like you said, but these other guys came up and they really provided a spark. Yeah, and Chris Myers and Justice Big, they have made themselves interesting to us. Like we want to see more from them in Double A. Want to see them face better pitching. Want to see the pitchers figure them out. But yeah, they put themselves, I think, on that sort of fringe prospect radar. We're like, hey, maybe this guy is more than we thought. And you never know. Like there are plenty of guys who can perform throughout the minors that don't necessarily have a big league future.
Crouch, thank you, Stan. Josh Crouch. Thank you.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stan. Yeah. So we work for anybody. Or Josh Crouch. Sorry. But yeah, like Josh Lester is a guy that comes to mind, right? Like he just destroyed minor league pitching year after year after year after year, and wasn't getting chances at the big leagues. He finally did, and I don't know what has happened to him since he got called up to Baltimore this year. But these guys could be players like that. They could be actual big leaguers. It could be Kerry Carpenter part 2 and 3. We don't know. We need to see more of it, I think.
Yeah, speaking of Baltimore, by the way, before I forget, Jordan Westberg was called up tonight. And so the parade of all-star or parade of talent, I don't say all-stars because not all of them are going to be all-stars. The parade of talent continues to be on the call-up. So actually, you know what? I talked to Winfield Perret. No. I talked to Flores and I talked to Santana. And we talked to Campos. No, you're right. We did talk to Campos technically. I did ask him a couple questions.
We talked to Campos. We talked to Young and Pacheco at the West Michigan Media Day. So
yeah,
we've talked to a handful of players this year. But the interview series is where we get a little bit more in depth than we did with just talking to the guys at ballpark. But yeah, still, it's nice. I'm glad that you were able to arrange it because I like to talk to these guys. It's fun to hear what makes them tick and what their perspective on the game is.
Yeah, especially I'll still never forget. He's now retired, but Brock Deppridge was a big fan of the farming simulator game on the computer, and then we played that for hours at a time.
And we heard that from Cody Clemens, right?
Yeah. And then that was
funny. Well, and you talked in real reporter style to Trey Cruz.
This is true. Yeah, I did talk to Trey Cruz real reporter style. Yeah, so again, no more of the humble brag stuff. But there was a question in here that I liked from. I'm just gonna say, is it
Crimmins one?
Crimmins one. Yep. The Mets GM mentioned he didn't want to bring up and develop young players and would like to prefer sign a free agent over them. Could this be a new philosophy? Overload the minors to make them look more valuable. And now that their injuries are affecting his theory and people are getting upset there also. You know what? I'm not sure what the hell the Mets are doing really, because the Mets have a very good deep. I think they have a pretty good in terms of like guys that are ready to go. They have some really good guys in their system that, like, when, for example, it took for a while for Brett Beatty to actually get even, I think it was the early call-up, I believe. They started the season in Syracuse. And then you guys, I mean, you have Ronnie Makiro in AAA. You have, and then the rest of the system is kind of like a little bit of a hodgepodge. But as far as guys are ready to go, but Mark they have all these pitching issues. Mike Vassell is still in Syracuse, and I don't know. Like, Mark, is Vientos up with his team right now?
Vientos? I don't know if he is or not.
I don't think he is.
But yeah, I don't think so. Like, I don't know. That's Billy Epler. Billy Epler, if you don't know, came up as a scout with the Yankees, became their scouting director, and he was very much with the Yankees in charge of getting free agents, big leaguers, not prospects. That was kind of his thing. And he went to GM for the Angels forever, and everybody knows how much of a fail the Angels have been. With two of the best players of all time and can't do anything. And then he got the job in the Mets. And we talked about it before. The problem with the Mets isn't necessarily, hitting. It's that they have all this money wrapped up in a bunch of old pitchers who haven't been healthy, and it's tough. I don't know if so. So I wouldn't say that's like a new GM philosophy. I think that's Billy Epler philosophy that maybe Scott Harris ascribes to. I don't think so. I don't know. Like the Cubs, when he was with the Cubs, they weren't shy about relying on their young players once they thought they were ready. And the Giants, Harris's old team, they brought up a couple of young guys this year and found some success with that. So I don't know. I think it's just whatever Scott Harris his plan was for this year. I think I don't think he's deviating it from very much, if you will. He doesn't seem like a guy who's quick to change his mind.
Yeah, I forgot that Billy was over with the Mets. But there was a comment in there that cracked me up. Deadly Ninja, but you said they're saving those guys for Ohtani. Which it could be completely the case. No, but it's even. I think one of the things about the Mets too that I find interesting, as far as them bringing up talent is concerned, is this is a team that traditionally does go by free agents, anyways. I mean, but then when the Mets are at their best, it's when they have players within the system. I mean, look at the '86 team as an example of that. I mean, they made a couple of trades, but your core of your '86 team is your farm system right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
Their last World Series team was mostly homegrown guys, plus Cespedes. And how depends on how much you want to define like Syndergaard as homegrown and Wheeler as homegrown. They traded for those guys, but yeah, I don't know. It's they're just in a unique situation where they're really all in. They have the high payroll in baseball, and so they don't want to come up and have these young players dealing with growing pains while they're trying to. But maybe who knows what's going to happen there, because they're like 6-7 games under 500, aren't they? They have to be the most disappointing team in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, if you even look at right now for the Yankees, it's kind of the opposite. They have some minor league players that are thriving really well, but I saw today it was trending on Twitter, DFA Donaldson. The Yankee fans are over Donaldson.
Well, their offense has been brutal for like a month, and Aaron Judge has some sort of sprained toe, torn ligament in his toe. Yeah, it's another strange situation there. So, but
yeah, it was funny too, because I guess the Steinbrenner, Hal Steinbrenner said, "What's the big deal? It's June." Alrighty, well,
yeah, I mean,
you're a Yankees fan.
There is some truth to that, right? I mean, the season's not even half over, but fans are fans. They freak out about everything. Look at today. Look at the Nevin up instead of Meadows. Like, it's a big wave of anger, and when ultimately it probably doesn't matter that much. I don't think it really matters for the Tigers' success. It just fans want to see players that they want to see, and they're tired of players that they don't want to see.
So let's get back to Erie and the pitching. And there's something too. We asked Alvarez about Montero, who had a really good week. That start, 5 2/3 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, and 11 strikeouts. And Alvarez basically said that you can see this guy in a major league roster. And the more you see him pitch, Chris, the more he seems like he's getting a lot more comfortable, and his command is outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a couple. Like, if you look at his ERA, it looks kind of nasty. It's still over 6 with Erie, because he had a couple really brutal outings, like short, lots of runs. But when he's on, he looks like one of the 3 best pitching prospects in the Tiger system. Honestly, like we talk, there's not a huge difference between his raw stuff and Jackson Job's raw stuff. Montero's sitting 94 to 96, up to 98, maybe 99 this week. He's got a slider that's like a 2,800 RPM breaking ball. He's got a slurve that's over 3,000. He's got a pretty good changeup. He throws a lot of strikes. He just occasionally gets a little loose in the zone, leave a slider hanging over the middle or leave a fastball up. But yeah, like we talked about before, heading into this year, his career high in strikeouts was 8 in any start. In his last 4 outings, he had one start that blew up in the first. The other 3, he had 9 strikeouts, and 11 strikeouts this week. So he is this is easily the best month of his career. He is a guy that's really on the ascent, and arguably top 10 prospect in the system now, which is really fun to see because we talk all the time about the lack of international prospects, and here's this kid coming, and he's only 22. He turns 23 next month, I think. So yeah, that's looks like a scouting win for them finally, or a development win, if you will. Maybe both.
And it's not a reliever too. Yeah, I mean the Tigers have been able to develop international relievers, no problem, but this will be their first starter.
Well, I mean, in theoretically though, I mean there are some small relieverish traits to him, but I look at him as less of a reliever risk as Reese Olson, and we've seen what Reese Olson has done. He's kind of really defied what my expectations were. So yeah, Montero's really exciting. That was that's good to see. And Flores he's continued to pitch well. Like I haven't looked at it, but his numbers basically since April I think have been really good. Aside from he's not dominating with strikeouts, but the ERA is down. I think he's basically what we thought he would. And Madden and Herter were solid last week. They got pretty good outings from everybody. The shocker one is the one there at the bottom, Lyle Lockhart, who was a guy they added, just 3 weeks ago or so.
Yeah.
What's kind of wild about him is he was a 9th round pick for the Dodgers in 2021. They just got rid of him. They cut him, and so the Tigers grabbed him, and he was relieving for them, and he comes out and just dominates Hartford, career high. The stuff doesn't necessarily jump off the page. It's a low 90s fastball up to 94 or so. Got a little arm side run, decent low 80s breaking ball, but he looked like another potential solid starter for Erie. So that's kudos to the Tigers scout who grabbed him.
So you're talking about Flores' numbers. So I was looking it up real quick. Since April, since May 6th, he's 4-1 with the ERA of 2.44 in 44.1 innings pitched. He's got 44 strikeouts exactly to 19 walks. He's only allowed 2 home runs though. 2 home runs and 12 earned runs.
Yeah, so the walks are up a little bit. The strikeouts aren't quite as where we want them to be, but we also know he's still developing. And then I think I told you there was a start, this most recent start, he struck out a right-handed batter on a changeup on like a 3-2 pitch. Right changeup, struck it out, good pitch. I was like, wow, that's development right there. Like, a lot of guys don't even bother or don't try to throw changeups to same side hitters. And so that was encouraging to see. So, we were a little bit down on him, and again, it's not dominating, but he's really performing well, which is good to see.
Yeah, and Greg spoke to him. Greg was talking to me about a little bit about how Flores has been battling through, and that the mindset he's trying to improve as a starter because he really wants to be a starter. So kudos to him and continue to buck down as the SeaWolves. If you notice, when the SeaWolves over the last month or so started, when the rotation got in order, that's when the team turned around. I mean, obviously the offense as well, but it seemed like when they were starting rotation before we moved to West Michigan, it was like an infusion based off what they got from Montero and Sawyer Gibson-Long, who Greg said they really miss him in his leadership because he's like the veteran ace of the veteran of the staff. He's pitched like an ace at times too.
Yeah.
And they definitely missed him during this last stretch here against Hartford to clinch.
Yeah, I mean he's been pitching really. He and Herter have been the 2 most consistent pitchers on the staff all year. Him going down hurt, but that Lockhart start was like a really wow, that really helped. So, and it'll be interesting to see just to finish up with Erie. They're already clinched the playoffs. So, and somebody asked Gabe Alvarez, like, what's the plan for the second half? Then you've already clinched the playoffs. What are you going to do? And he said, we're going to go out there and still try to win, just the same mindset. But it wouldn't shock me if we see them pivot a little bit more to maybe some younger guys to develop more. I don't know. I mean, there's not a ton to bring up from West Michigan anymore, but we already saw Danny Soretti come up. They sent Luis Santana down, so I think they're going to do a little bit more developing there in Erie this second half of the season.
Yeah, and as we move to West Michigan, the one guy who we may even see him at the end of Erie at the end of the season. At first, it's not the name you think, and Jace Young, who struggled this week, but maybe a guy like Roberto Campos is. I mean, he's had a 15-game hitting streak. He went 4 for 4. Was it Saturday? Went 4 for 4.
4 for 4 with a walk. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's seen the ball well, but some of the adventures in the outfield continue. As we got tipped off on a couple of things, but it's still getting there. But I don't know. I think on the pitching side of things, Chris, for West Michigan, there might be, if Troy Melton continues this pace, why not call him up at some point based off the fact that he's getting more comfortable with his velocity and command, and that line right there. 18 innings, 10 hits, a run, just a 1 earned run and 4 walks and 18 strikeouts.
Those are his numbers since his first outing. And we went and saw him, and he was out in the second inning because he couldn't throw enough strikes. And since then, they've had him actually dial it back slightly. He was sitting 95, 97 in that start.
Yeah,
98. Yep. And now he's like 92, 95. And I'm sure, at some point he can turn that back on and amp it up when he needs to. But yeah, he's pitching really well. And for sure, that's a guy that you could see getting moved up to Erie for a challenge later in the year. I don't know, what else they want to see from him other than developing those pitches. But and Campos would be a really cool one to see him go up. There's some interesting, as you said, when the year started, we caught Campos making a couple really nice acrobatic plays in the outfield. I'm like, oh man, this guy, he could play some center field, and he has the physical tools to do it. But as the year has gone on, and you trust people who watch every single day, right? I always find that those are the best sources for a player's defense, because we can go and watch a game or watch a weekend series and see a guy make 2-3 plays that look great. Looks like a great defender. Meanwhile, the rest of the week he misplayed, 6-7 plays, and Campos is just really, really raw. And I don't. It's hard to know what's going on there, right? It's because he's got the physical tools, like I said, but some of it's just kind of boneheaded mistakes, and some of it is like maybe he just doesn't care about defense. I don't know. It's hard to fathom. But the hitting is going well, as you said. 7 for 21 this week. He still hits the ball hard. It's still not quite enough power to as you want to see from him. And he's already basically fully grown. Like, I don't think that he's a big kid. And I don't necessarily think he's going to get a lot bigger, though. So if he's going to start producing power, it's going to have to come from some sort of swing tweak, I guess. Right? Otherwise, he's going to end up being like a Yandy Diaz player, which has turned out great this year, but you always feel like you want a little bit more. But it's hard to be upset about his production so far this year as a kid who just turned 20 in playing in the North for the first time.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where I give a lot of credit to him to just, there's so many products of your environment. You're talking about being up here for the first time. You're far away from any weather you're used to on a regular basis. That has to be hard. And the fact that he's continuing to adjust and get better as the days go by is quite impressive. I mean, for his age, and even just even the road trips too. I mean, you're going to places that, I think that's a different thing, comparatively speaking, to taking the bus down in Florida, where it's you're going to deal with the same kind of environment no matter where you go. But up here, it may be 80 here, but you might go to Wisconsin, for example, it might be 65. Little things like that to consider.
Yeah, and he's a guy that, like, one of those situations where if they kept him in West Michigan all year, I'm 100% fine with that.
Yeah.
Like I said, he just turned 20. He's young for the level. He's young in terms of reps and experience, and he's more than holding his own. So that's a positive development this year.
So one guy that's back on the train and what Stan's personal favorites is Carlos Pena. Over his last 2 starts, 11 innings, 7 hits, 2 earned runs, 6 walks, a little up there though, but he had 14 strikeouts. And again, I want to see him live. I think they're playing Dayton this week at home, so I think I'm making a point to go out and see him live because I have not seen. I've only seen Pena once live. I saw him pitch for Lakeland last year, but I've not had a chance to see him in West Michigan. I want to get a closer look too. So, but a couple things came out in here. Well, before we continue to move on with West Michigan, Noah says, "I hope Wyatt Lanford didn't screw up his draft stock enough to not to follow the Tigers, or didn't up his. Oh, sorry, he didn't up his draft stock because he was on fire earlier."
Yeah, in case you missed it, Wyatt Langford, the Florida outfielder, went 5 for 5 with 2 doubles, a homer, a walk, and 6 RBIs today in Florida's extreme blowout win over LSU. I don't think the Pirates would be like, hey, look at that, let's take him instead. I think they've considered him all along. It wouldn't shock me at all if they took Langford first overall. I think he's that close to Dunn Cruz. If that happens, and then maybe Cruz goes second, then we're in a strange spot. If Langford goes first, maybe the Nats still take Schemes, and then you've got Dylan Cruz and boo-hoo. You've got the Golden Spikes Award winner. It's such a good year to have a top 3 pick that you really have to try hard to screw this up, and hopefully the Tigers will not. And
here's one from Michael. Wasn't the old saying power was the last thing to develop? I know this was before exit velocities and launch angles. Is that still a thing, or you have to have top exit velocities to have power? Isn't there? I would have sworn, Chris, we talked about this. I think Fangraphs, or I forgot who released an article about exit velocities, top exit velocities, correlation to power.
Yeah, well, there was Fangraphs a couple of articles about your 95th percentile exit velocity, which is apparently the most sticky year-to-year stat that they could find for production. Basically, if you're, and all that means is, if you had 100 hard hit balls, how hard was there 100 balls in play, how hard was the 95th one that you hit? That's your 95th percentile exit velocity. Yeah, and that's it depends. It depends on if power is the last thing developed. Some guys you say for sure, because they just have to learn how to pull the ball more, or they have to grow into their body. And with Campos' situation, I think it's more of a learning to pull the ball, learning to lay off pitches that he can hit for singles, but maybe wait for one that he can drive for a double or a home run. And one thing we saw, I don't remember the last time he hit a home run, but he had several early in the year, and including one on, I want to say, a 97, maybe 99 mile an hour fastball inside, and he just turned like lightning and crushed it to left field. And I think pitchers in that league have learned that, don't throw them inside. So you'll see fastballs away. You'll see breaking balls down, breaking balls away. He doesn't chase a ton. You can get him out that way at times, but I think they're just going away from him. And he is, right now at least, he's doing more kind of singles up the middle, singles the opposite way. We've seen earlier in the year that he was driving the ball in the air the opposite field too. He just isn't doing it right now. But there's like you said, he's 20. There's still time for him to figure that out, but I don't think physically he's going to get any stronger. He is a big, strong kid who's already producing probably, 80th percentile overall exit velocity. Like if you put him in the majors, he'd be up there among, some of the hardest hitters, not like the top guys, but he hits the ball hard consistently.
Another guy. So let's get back to West Michigan here. And there is a Connor Holden, which interesting story about Connor Holden, Chris. He was a minor league free agent signing, correct? He wasn't drafted out of college, right?
I don't believe so. Yeah, I think
because usually I would think this would be a quote, David Chad special because he pitched at Wichita State.
Yeah,
but in this case, he was with the State College Spikes as of last year, and then the Tigers signed him last August, and he went in the Complex League. Pitched in Lakeland. It's arguably one of the better pitchers Lakeland had, making 29 innings pitched, 35 strikeouts to just 8 walks, and he made his debut in West Michigan. This is a guy I'm looking forward to seeing too, also in person.
Yeah, the fun thing there is he got a hold in that game, so he lived up to his name. Connor B. Holden. He got a hold in that game. It was nice to see him come up. There's been a lot of player movement. We talked about Myers and Big B going up from West Michigan, we saw Soretti leave. So they're kind of, for lack of a better word, they kind of abandoned the Whitecaps because their playoff run ended a few weeks ago. They had a rough stretch down here, but yeah, they brought up some interesting names from Lakeland to fill in some roster spots, and Holden's a guy that we haven't seen, I don't think, at all. I don't know. Maybe we saw him pitch against Bradenton or St. Lucie, but I don't remember. So yeah, it's don't know if he's a prospect in any real renown or regard, but he's probably got something there. So
yeah, so we got some breaking news in here as Noah just informed us that MLB Pipeline just released new top 100, and Cole Keith's 43rd overall. Jace Young is 63rd. It was funny. Somebody on Twitter put with the pipe list, and I just saw this on Twitter, said that makes Cole Keith's Detroit's number one prospect. Tigers MLB report had him there first. Well, I mean, it's cool to be trendsetters. It was funny too because Sam Dykstra, who works for MLB.com, I got a chance to talk to him in spring training. I got to introduce him. Great guy. I was like, just take a look at Cole Keith, and just kind of pass it along. And so, but they have the way they make that up too. It's kind of a weird process, but how they rank them. But because we just look at one particular system. They have to think of 30 other systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's, people need to give everyone some slack, right? Like,
yeah,
nobody can even Baseball America, they have like 8 or 9, maybe more guys and gals work on their top 30s and come up with a top 100. It's impossible to cover every organization as much as we do. And there are people who do individual organizations in more depth than we do. Our buddy with the Reds, and people really devote a lot of time to this stuff, and it's impossible to give it that level of scrutiny. And so what other people saw was Colt Keith, put up some good numbers in low A, got hurt, went to the AFL, looked big, hit pretty well, but was playing bad defense and looked a little too chunky. That's what they saw. Whereas we saw the kid, all early last year, we saw, what he could do with the bat. And we even had some, history with him down in Lakeland, just from people we talked to, having seen him down there. So, and we've talked about this before. You made him your number one prospect in June or July last year, and it took me until after the season to just go, yeah, I think he's the best prospect in the system. So, and that, I don't know if that became, I don't know why I came around on that, but yeah, he ended up being our number one last December or whatever, when we put out our top 25, top 30, and it's nice to see him continue to perform and the industry agree now. I don't know, at the risk of being labeled a Jace Young hater, I'm kind of surprised that he's still in their top 100. But again, I don't know. We pay a lot more attention, I guess. Like I said.
And for the record, though, if Chris Point, this is the thing I don't want to get too sidetracked, but before we go down to Lakeland, I always find it interesting when fans, I'm not saying all fans, but sometimes when you see what you say what you saw with your own eyes and what you think, but you're a hater because you're not agreeing with somebody, and I think that's really, really ridiculous. And there's this kind of almost installed, "Oh, I told you so" kind of moment when somebody's doing well, and I think it's kind of ridiculous. And so I don't know, just if you see what you see. And like, for example, like I thought Cole Keith was the best guy in the system based off what I saw early on, and nothing really changed my mind after that because that's what I saw. And with Young, it's the same thing. Like there's days where Young looks like one of the best prospects in the system, and then there's moments where it's not there. But Keith is most consistent. It doesn't, to me, the point I'm trying to make is simply this: it's about consistency, and if you see it day in, day out, then it can form your opinion.
Yeah, and it's easy to get swayed by things you see for anybody. Like we've talked about it a bunch of times with Isaac Pacheco. We saw a couple series with Isaac Pacheco look like a future All-Star, and he has been struggling all year, basically, outside of a couple good series. And Jace Young, I put it up there. He had that awesome Player of the Week. Remember, he went nuts that one week. But bonkers since then. He's 10 for 60. He's leading the Midwest League in home runs, I think, with 12, which is great. He's still walking at a high rate, but you just have to look at this as like, okay, is this going to play at higher levels? Is this gonna be a big league bat? And when you see the types of pitches that he misses, the types of pitches he swings through, it makes me very skeptical that he's going to be able to hit enough to keep hitting for power and keep walking at higher levels. Again, it's his first pro season, and the power has really come on in a big way. I mean, that was one of my main concerns last year, was he didn't seem to have that game power. It's here. He's walking plenty. It's the stuff that he's not hitting that makes me concerned, if that makes any sense. Like, we often complain about Spencer Torkelson missing like middle pitches in the big leagues. Well, I'm seeing that with Jace Young in high A, and that concerns me. Maybe he can turn it around. Hopefully he can, because that was their first round pick last year, right? So, but as I'm saying, like, he doesn't look like a top 100 prospect to me right now. But the pipeline is sticking to their guns there, and maybe they'll be proven right. And maybe Jung will turn it on, and somebody will, like you said, someone will come up and pop up and say, "You still hate him, Chris?" And I'll just have to eat it. But that's, like you said, it's part of what comes with giving your opinion on these things.
Yeah, and I'm all for it. Like I said, if I'm wrong, it was funny too. Stan mentioned to me earlier, and I laughed about this when I was really excited about Kansas City's the Royals pitching, and I said at one point the Royals pitching may look better than the Tigers. He reminded me of that. I'm like, you know what? I own that. I'm like, it was just so funny. Like, I think of Stoney from Stoney Wojo on a ticket, and I'm a fan of his, but there was always this thing where I think they started doing it more recently, where he will admit when they're wrong. There's some guys that won't, Pat Caputo, but it's crazy. That's fine. And, we take the L's and we move on.
Yeah, and I think just looking at some of the other top 100 lists, it does seem like Pipeline really sticks with their draft rankings pretty heavily, because you'll look and you see that Elijah Green is still they have him ranked 86. Elijah Green, that super tooled up high school outfielder. Well, so far in low A ball this year, Elijah Green is hitting 221 with a 43% strikeout rate, 3 home runs, 22 steals. The tools are there, but boy, I don't know if anybody has ever succeeded striking out 40% of the time in low A ball. So
I can't think of anybody right now off the top of my head. That's wow.
That would concern me. And meanwhile, so like two spots behind him is Robbie Snelling, who was a pitcher that the Padres took last year. High school pitcher. He was a quarterback. I want to say he was out of like Nevada, somewhere like that. Kind of raw, because he was a two sport guy. But all the reports on him this year are outstanding. And you look at his numbers as a 19-year-old in low A, as a pitcher, 51 2/3 innings, 1.57 ERA, 30% strikeout rate, only walking 6% of the batters. Like, in all the scouting reports match up with him being really good. So, but he wasn't drafted as highly as Elijah Green. So I think they're leaning heavily into their draft rankings still.
Yeah. No, this is true, Stan. You did not call me names or anything. I was just saying, like, how we're not always right. That's what I'm saying. That's my only point, really.
No, for the most part, nobody like calls us names or like throws it back in our face. I have to say that most fans are cool.
Well,
every now and then there's somebody who leaves a review on your podcast. Says you're a associator.
Or there's one guy. There's a guy. The only person that has me blocked on Twitter, and that's a story for another day. That guy's that's a strange cat. But yeah. Anyway, yeah. Well, we'll talk about that off air. He's DM people, and he made this person actually said a joke about my mom.
Oh, geez.
Who passed away 12 years ago, and gently reminded him about that. So yeah. But anyway, whatever. Let's move on, and let's go into Lakeland. So my mouse stopped working, so let me see what's going on here.
Well, one thing I want to mention as this comes along is again, I don't know how or where they're going to make room, but I could see the dynamic of the Whitecaps changing pretty dramatically over the next month, because as it stands, they're pretty, at least for the most part, they're kind of a slow slugging team. But given what we've seen from a couple of the players here in Lakeland, if they do come up eventually, that might change dramatically, because guys like Peyton Graham and Seth Stevenson and Dom Johnson are all very fast and love to run. So we might see the dynamic change of the Whitecaps dramatically, like I said, but they have to get called up for that to happen. And Michael Meyer asked, didn't Khalil Watson do that too? A huge K rate last year. He did have a huge K rate last year. He also had a lot of other issues going on last year, off the field stuff, demeanor. But his K rate last year was 35.5%. So like 7% lower than Elijah Green. Anything over 30 is concerning, but 40 is like huge blinking red light. This is a problem. So anyway.
Yeah, that's one of those things where I think that Watson, was it did he walk under? He walked under 5%, didn't he?
Watson was okay walking. It was so I'm looking right now, 35.5% strikeout, 7.5% walk rate last year. It may have been down under 5. Like he had a really rough first half of the season, got suspended, came back and maybe was able to bring it up after that, after some attitude adjustments. But and that's tough. You remember we did the draft show that year. I had my top 3, I think, were Leiter, Meyer, and Watson. So those are the 3 guys I wanted. And Leiter hasn't been very good. Watson hasn't been very good. And Meyer has been pretty good.
Yeah, it's been really good. But we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that thing where everybody talk about Meyer. So Lakeland, yes, Chris, Lakeland, Peyton Graham got out the Schneid.
Yeah, I mean, he had one really big game, but I'm going to look at this. I think he's been trending up for most of June. I'm going to pull up his stats now. That's the Tigers' second round pick last year. He's a guy that you could definitely say power would be the last thing to come with him because he's built like a sandwich. If that makes any sense. He's very skinny. Yeah, so it's nice to see him perform because it was a struggle there for a while. But he's one of the more tooled up kids in the entire system, just in terms of speed, defensive ability. He's got all the tools to stick it. So yeah, in June, looking right now, Peyton Graham in June hitting 326, 12 for 46. He's got only a pair of doubles, 1 home run, 4 walks, 9 strikeouts, 4 steals. That's good for a 132 WRC plus. That's a start, right?
Yeah.
You'd hope that a college player would perform like that in low A ball, but yes, do it. And you'd like to see more power. And like I said, I think that's the last thing that's going to come with him, and it may never come because he's so Chet Holmgren skinny. But it'll be interesting to see if he comes up to West Michigan because he's a guy I definitely want to get eyes on.
I hope that this is kind of a thing where it turns around and we can start seeing this going forward, because if anything, it gives the Tigers another problem, another infielder that can hit. So, and even now, Lakeland's got some interesting arms. We saw that the Jackson Jobe stuff here we'll get to in a second. But Franklin Perez is up in Lakeland. That's a step forward. So it's a huge step forward. If you really think about it, Chris, he's been in complex ball since he's been injured, pretty much.
Yeah. We tweeted it out the other day that he picked up his first win in the complex ball. He picked up his first win since August of 2017. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but he barely pitched for the Tigers after they got him. Like, it was almost instantaneous that he started getting hurt. And I think he's probably still has fewer than 56 innings over those years. And who knows? And last we saw him pitch, his velocity was way down. He was struggling with command. But now we're going to get some StatCast data on him. Maybe there's something left. You hope so. Even if there's not, you just got to give credit to the kid for still going out and trying and competing, because it would be awfully easy to give up, I think, dealing with injuries for 5 consecutive years. So, and we've seen stories before with guys, disappearing for a handful of years and coming back and making it. So you just kind of, cross your fingers and hope for him.
Yeah, and I hope so, because then it's just not because we won the trade kind of nonsense, but just because it's just a good story to hear, and that is a lot to overcome. And considering the change of organizations, everything, it's just, it is to wake up and make all that progress, and then you get an injury and you have to start all over again. That is, it's a mental thing that I don't wish around anybody. It's unfortunate, but getting back to the pitching here, Marco Jimenez, who's got some, again, Chris, command issues. He's had some command issues, but it looks like he's trying to figure things out a little bit.
You know, he's a pretty inconsistent guy. He'll have really dominant outings and other outings where he gives up 7 runs. I think he's a bullpen arm. I don't know when they're going to finally make that switch because he has a starter's arsenal. It's just he can't command it all the time. But he's upper 90s fastball, a couple nice breaking balls, a changeup. He's got it all. He just, it's not consistent enough. But maybe one day the light will, or the whatever will click. Something will click for him. The light will go on. That's what the people say, right?
That's
but
right.
I wanted to highlight him because he had a good outing, basically.
Well, so they're asking what kind of velocity Perez have now. Does he have now? We'll probably find out by the end of the week.
Yeah, we should. I mean, the last time I remember seeing him pitch,
87. I think it was 87, 86.
It was like 86 to 89. Yeah, which was like this was a dude who was sitting 94 to 96 when the Tigers acquired him when he was 19. So, we'll see. Yeah, hopefully he's back in the 90s and something could work there. They've only been working him out of the bullpen. Who knows? But somebody Kremen's also said, how about Joey Gallo in terms of strikeout rates? I think, yeah, Joey Gallo is always the one people point to at the same level as Elijah Green. Joey Gallo did strike out 37% of the time. He also hit 38 home runs and had a 10% walk rate. Joey Gallo has always had 80 grade power and basically 80 grade patience. And he's just kind of Adam Dunn, guys like that can get by because the power and the on base is so strong. And that's not really Elijah Green. Elijah Green is not walking a ton or hitting for a ton of power. He's stealing a lot of bases, but I don't know how valuable that is. Anyway.
And then Job, there's good progress here from Job, who I think we'll probably see at West Michigan here in the next couple of weeks.
You would think so. I mean, we went from, I was skeptical we'd see Job again this year. We talk about all the time. Yeah. Back injuries, you'd never know. Then he came out out of shoot on fire, 2 innings in the Florida Complex League. We're like, oh, okay, already 2 innings. And then they brought him up and he was about 50 pitches, I think, in the Florida State League there. And yeah, the stuff was pretty electric, like kind of what we expected. The spin rates were off the charts. The velocity was up 97, 98 he touched. He developed a new cutter, which I don't think he had before. That's like a 92 mile an hour pitch, another pitch with like a high, it's like 2,800 RPMs. So he's got the slider and the curveball over 3,000 RPMs. He's got the cutter at 2,800. His changeup is 1,800, 2,000. So look at him on StatCast, he looks like just a spectacular pitcher. But then you see he only had like 5 swings and misses. So it's like, well, there's still some figuring it out down to go. But like you said, it's just really exciting to have him back in pitching. And hopefully we'll see him within the month.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, when we saw him last year, that the confidence is there for him. He does not lack confidence, that's for sure. So
yeah, and he'll flash. We saw it. You still see the tweet we had where he struck out Pete Crow Armstrong, the top 100 prospect, on 3 pitches, fastball, changeup, and slider. He threw 3 different pitches, struck him out on 3 pitches. It was great. Yeah. Pete Crow Armstrong was very upset about one of them and maybe had destroyed some things in the stadium afterward. But yeah, so it's nice to have him back. It's nice to have Tanner Colehep back. People might not remember him. We talked about him on Thursday a little bit on the Motor City Metric show, but their 5th round pick from 2 years ago hadn't pitched yet because he got hurt. And he came out and threw 1 inning, and that's another electric arm with really unique stuff. I put spin rate there because I talked about in the other show. He throws a 2-seamer, sinker, with a spin rate 120 RPMs higher than anybody in the majors on their sinker. Just unicorn pitch. And it's comes from like a low 3/4, almost sidearm angle. He also has a pretty nice slider to go along with it. So nice to see him back for sure. You get Rothenberg lull there. I just say it felt like a lull kind of week. Like this is a dude who he's been in low A ball for most of the year. Started in high A last year. Mike Rothenberg, the catcher, switch hitting catcher from Duke. This is, I think it puts into perspective sometimes what you see from rookie ball stats. Back in the day when Brock Deathridge was tearing up the Gulf Coast League. Mike Rothenberg, 6 for 11, 5 home runs last week. 25, 97 OPS. Yeah, it's he has conquered rookie ball. I think I'm going to go out on the limb.
What I am encouraged about though is the Tigers getting some pitching from a 19-year-old, and as far as like international side, Gabriel Torres. This is where the Tigers, outside of relievers, they haven't had too many starter luck, and so this was good to see.
Yeah, I mean he's a guy. This is his box score looking really. I'm looking at the box scores and seeing, and okay, this is a 19-year-old that they brought stateside. I know nothing about him, but sometimes you just you look at age, you look at the size of the pitcher, and a lot of times the size and weight are way off because it's what they signed for it or what they were at 16. But a 19-year-old pitching well, that intrigues me a little bit. So we'll just keep an eye on him and see what maybe he bumps up. Sometimes what we'll see is a guy will come up to the Florida State League for the final 3 weeks of the season and might get a couple outings from him and get a glimpse at what he has. And so, just a name to remember. Maybe not.
Yeah, because it's a name that you can remember too, because the Rangers also have a prospect the same exact name too.
Do they?
So yes, they do. And so, but yeah, there's outside of, I'm trying to think of like the reason why we should mention that is because not very happens often. I mean, I think of Raylan Castillo too. I was getting really excited about Raylan Castillo. Like, man, hopefully he comes aboard and you get to see him here stateside soon, and that would be awesome to see. But yeah, Gleyber Torres, by the way, is from Venezuela, born in 2003.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That says something because he pitched only 6 games last year in the Dominican Summer League. So that is kind of an important development. And same thing with Duque Hibbert, who the Nicaraguan World Baseball Classic stud, who continues to pitch well.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to put his name in the slide every week because he's one of the few guys he's one of the older guys in the DSL, and he continues to perform. So, and people have heard of him, which is key.
Yeah.
Because other than remembering some weird names like Jomer Guachache
or
Fran Yerbert,
Framber, is it Fran Yerbert?
Fran Drescher Montilla, and you got Nuremberg Rondon, and I was like, Nuremberg. He's been in the system for a while. I'm like, did he get named for Nuremberg? He must have. But
they call him Berg for short. Berg.
I don't know what you call him. Nui.
REM. Rem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and I brought this up last week. We mentioned the names up there. Carlos Pellegrin's a fun name too, but Josue Briseño is a guy that I've really kind of been poking out there a little bit for people to pay attention to because of, again, performance, but also he was one of their bigger signings last year. Not Javier Osorio or Samuel Hill, but he got $800,000, I think, which is pretty big bonus for the Tigers. And he's a big kid, listed at 6'4", 180, I think probably 200, maybe 220 by now. Catcher, and he's performing in his first taste of state, in baseball in the United States. All interesting check marks for me. I have no idea if he's actually any good, but just a name to remember there again. Josue Briseño. I assume that's how you pronounce his name. Maybe it's Josie Briseño, but
Briseño. It could be Briseño. I don't know.
I assume it's Briseño. It could be Briseño, I guess, and I assume that Josue is Josue, but maybe it is Josue.
Josue. Yeah, I don't know that. I would have to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure you're right about that.
But yeah, and then Anibal Salas is kind of the early performer from this year's class. I think he's still 17, outfielder. He's putting up some good extra base hit numbers, showing some speed, outfielder. So, but there's only so much you can learn from rookie ball stats. See Mike Rothenberg.
Yeah, LOL. No, it's true, and hopefully we get to see some of these names in Lakeland, and that's where if we see some of these names coming up in Lakeland, that is significant progress because, again, the Tigers need some more international wins, period, and on the pitching side and even on the hitting side of things. So, and Campos is a start. So, was there any questions this week? I don't think we had any questions or outside of the ones.
I didn't. I don't think I tweeted out that I didn't check the You must have tweeted out, right? But
no, I didn't. I
no.
that's my fault then. That's all me.
No,
That's me.
Thanks for people showing up anyway. Like,
Yeah, no,
let's
yeah,
do
but
this
you know
thing
what?
so-
It's because I think it's because we've been pretty consistent over the last month of what time we've been doing it on Sunday nights, and so, yeah, it's been. Oh, and also, you know what? I did schedule it earlier on YouTube, so the earlier I schedule in the day, I think that does help. So
Yeah.
before
The only other thing is the draft is 2 weeks away. 2 weeks from tonight. Hard to
2
believe.
weeks from tonight. So the normal recap show is not probably not going to happen. More likely not.
I would say not.
No.
Yeah, maybe we'll just do a write up on Monday or Tuesday. It's like,
Yeah, well,
here's what happened last week.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of production with this show, and it's going to be it's one of those things where I'm actually going to be doing less work. Hey, Clay, good to see you, man. Shout out to Clay Soden from Just Baseball. Really good guy, knows the system pretty well too, and shout out to him. You should follow him on Twitter, and I should mention his name on Twitter. Now I can't remember it off the top of my head, but Just Baseball, the site. So actually, I'll promote the website because that's actually here.
Claiborne Snowden at Clay_SNO.
Thank you. So yeah, just go to justbaseball.com. Check out all the great work over there. They got some really good, talented folks over there. And Trevor, friend of the show. So Trevor Huth will be joining us there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Trevor's over there.
One other thing I want to mention, and I'm saying this on here just to make sure I do this, is I mentioned it on Thursday, like, hey, if you guys saw every plate appearance, you might think differently about these plays. I'm gonna do a call them up series this week where, I don't know, 5 or 6 hitters in the system. I'm going to take every pitch they saw last week and clip them together in a video and show them to you guys. And then maybe you can, see if you still want guys to be called up immediately. Maybe you will. I think with Parker Meadows, you probably will. With other guys, maybe not so much.
It's almost like it's like just drop worthy. You know what I mean? Like,
call them up.
Call them up or
wrong.
If either he's
that boy is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can do with that.
Even 1 week of pitches is probably not fair to these guys, but it's more fair than only showing highlights.
Yeah.
Because that really, I think, I don't want to make the comparison I was going to make because that's not appropriate. But
you know what? I think here's one thing I've learned about our fan base. The people who watch our show or listen to us on our podcast, we have some really intelligent fans. And I really think one of the things that's nice is that a lot of them will say they'll see the hype behind it and they'll go, but they question why. And they'll say, hey, why is this person getting this or whatever? I like that. I mean, not all of them are going to be slam dunks, but I also think that it's just like I like to know that, or I feel confident and I feel solace when people talk about prospects with us and they're like, oh, I see what you guys are saying, or I saw this or whatever, and having a good discussion and having these really nice discussions. And so to me, that's the best part. When you go up to the ballpark and you can talk to somebody about baseball and just have like a back and forth, like, what did you see here? I saw this, and this. It's like, for example, Trevor was really high on Reese Olson. We saw him in Toledo. That fastball command and slider command was not there. And all of a sudden it just clicked. And he's been the Tigers just dominating. Just this, you posted a stat about his rookie strikeout numbers. And it's mind blowing because it's just, even if you see it, you're like, what just happened?
Yeah. And what's wild about that is, that his last outing, I've always considered his changeup to be his best pitch.
Yeah.
And his slider has been absolutely gross at the big league level. And they've had him throw basically 90% fastballs and sliders, and it worked. I was like, wow, I thought he'd throw more changeups. So, we've talked many times, Chris Fetter, Juan Nieves, Raman, they seem to know what they're doing at the big league level. They've done a lot of improving of pitchers once they get to the top level. And maybe we should have just saw that with just looked at Reese Olson's raw stuff and thought, okay, they can do something with this. Every time he makes a start, it makes me feel less and less concerned about him becoming a reliever. I still think he probably would be an outstanding reliever if they went that route, but make the guy start until he proves he can't, right? That's what we always said. I mean, here's the frustrating thing. So Deadly Ninja Beast said, "Is Olsen better than Matt Manning?" So I guess we could check off the boxes, right? Does he throw harder than Matt Manning? Kind of, at least as hard. Does he have better secondary stuff than Matt Manning? Significantly better secondary stuff. Is his command good as Matt Manning? Probably not quite. Manning has always thrown a lot of strikes, not necessarily in the best locations. Manning's fastball shape, I think, is a lot better than Olsen's, at least part because of his extension and because of his low release height and stuff like that. But I wouldn't kill you if you said, I would kill you anyway. I don't like to kill. Even though I'm not a huge fan of bees, particularly Deadly Ninja Bees, but not the person, but actual insects. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Olsen goes on to have a more productive career than Matt Manning. We haven't seen Matt Manning develop really at all, if we're being honest, right?
I mean, we see flashes.
Well, that's like the frustrating thing with, we talk about Jackson Joe picked up this cutter in the offseason, basically. Like, okay, I'm going to throw a cutter now. And I don't know, maybe it's not a great pitch for him, but Matt Manning should have been throwing the cutter for like the last 3 years. Every now and then he throws an accidental cutter and it's an awesome pitch, but he hasn't figured out how to do it on the regular or hasn't wanted to. I don't know. He really should, because it would be a great pitch for him. And supposedly Robin Lund loves cutters, and that's like his specialty. So we'll see what happens. But
that's another. We'll say that we'll have to save that for next week. The Robin Lund effect. Like, honestly, we have to. If there's significant, like, look at Sawyer Gibson Long. That's a prime example of that. I bet you they flew in Robin from somewhere, like the Robin symbol from Batman comes in. He just is like, "Here, I'm going to teach you a cutter here in 3 days. You're going to miss a start." What? Okay. Yeah. And then boom, what happens? Gibson Long has one of his best starts his career afterwards.
Yeah. Flew in on the lawnmobile.
Yeah. Like, you can, man, I'm just trying to think who would be. So is Ryan Garco Batman then?
Garco sounds like a Batman name a little bit.
Yeah. Mild-mannered Ryan Garco. Tigers development president of minor league operations, but at night
he stays in the
Darko man. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got Robin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Garco and Robin. Man, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, look, if there's people who are listening to this and they run with it, go for it by all means.
I think Fat Man and Robin could be a Photoshop.
I was waiting for it. I'm like, wait. Yeah, that's, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to work on a Batman symbol for that. Fat Man and Robin. It makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fat Man.
Makes sense to us. That's all.
And you know what? They're both Big Ten guys.
Oh, there you go.
And actually the color, and it looks like the color scheme. Look, black and yellow. Robin can be black and yellow. And Chris is maize and blue.
Maize and blue. Yeah, old Batman. That's kind of maize and blue, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of was. Yeah. But no tights. No tights. That's it. Okay. It's getting late. All right. Thank you so much for listening to the Tiger Minor League podcast here at TigersMLReports.com. For all the Patreon subscribers, we get some extra content from Jerry. Jerry's been killing it. Props to Jerry, who writes things unprovoked by other, not by people. He does things on his own. And I give him a lot of respect, a lot of props, because he's been killing it on the stat stuff too. I'm getting back off the schneid, and I'm going to write some articles this week. Last few weeks have been adjustment for work, and truth be told, from Woodward, when I was at Woodward Sports, I wrote somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 100 articles, almost 150, 200 articles before April. That, I did the math on that, and I was just like, no wonder why felt like I didn't want to write, because I was kind of burned out from doing it.
Yeah, there's a thing about writing because you have to, as opposed to because you want to. And when you feel like you writing because you want to, you can write a lot more and a lot better, I think, than when writing when you have to. But that's good. My pitching draft preview should be out tomorrow. Shout out to Cameron and Connor. Congrats to Connor on his new gig and his taking that first big step in life, moving out to California. He was the one who hooked us up with a couple of those interviews, right?
Yeah, and Connor's Connor's been really influential. He's been a fan of the podcast, and yeah, a big shout out to him and Cameron too. There's going to be a Reddit thread for the draft that as soon as we get logged in and all that stuff, I'll share the thread throughout the week, and you can ask us draft questions. So we're going to be the next 2 weeks is just draft focus, and appreciate shout out to Alex, and there's a lot of people to thank, but thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. We'll be back on Thursday for the Most Metrics podcast. I'm not going to do a second podcast this week because, quite frankly, the Tigers lost against the Twins, and they play Texas tomorrow. I don't see the need in doing the podcast tomorrow. So if you and John want to do one, by all means. But I'll be back on Thursday.
I would like to find out what happened on Thursday night with John. But,
John, apparently it went good for John. So
nice.
Yeah, nice. I know. Again, she must be really cool because he missed the Pistons draft show and our show to do it.
Nice.
All right. On that note, have a good night, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.